Welcome to this LinkedIn version of my interview with Anya Bhardwaj. Anya graduated from Georgetown University in 2019 with a major in international relations. Coming back to India after a few years of working at WeWork, she was at the Indian government at an NII fund. So you can explain what it is, Anya, and then go ahead and do your introductions.
Cool. So that sums it up. Where I was most recently is called the National Investment Infrastructure Fund. The fund is the largest investor in the fund is the government of India, and the other 51% comes in from the private sector. So large institutional investors globally, all the way from pension funds to other sovereign wealth funds, are predominant investors. And the fund is divided into three funds, one with a focus on infrastructure, one with a focus on fund of funds, and the third with a focus on private equity. So across these three asset classes, the fund manages $4.5 billion currently, and obviously looking to grow. The team that I was a member of was the Strategy and Policy Fund, which primarily worked across all three funds in both facilitating investment policies that could make investing into certain sectors easier. And the second objective was to bring in new sectors of investment for the fund. So I worked most closely on the renewable space and looking at solutions for decarbonization as India transitions to net zero.
Great. I think the topic, which is renewables and funding for large projects for renewable energy, there's been a huge push in India and other developing countries. If you were to kind of give a 30,000 feet view of what it really means and where we are all headed with renewable energy, what do you think would be a good summary?
I would say the transition is inevitable at this point. Our target of 2070 is much later than a lot of developed countries, but the position India is in with lower historical contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, I think all the way from our government to private sector, we're taking that 2070 target very seriously. Every day in the newspaper, I'm hearing about a new idea for decarbonization in new sectors, all the way from agriculture to shipping to transportation. So I think it is inevitable. I think in terms of funding, we could be doing a much better job, and that's where my interest lies. Global capital deployment, all the way from developed countries to developing countries, has been very, very low, and far from the 100 billion per year commitment as was promised at many international fora. So that's a lot of the work that I'm interested in doing, is unlocking that global capital into markets such as India, where the need is dual of both economic growth while making sure that people don't fall into poverty as we shift our economy to decarbonization.
It seems like India is at this stage where the rivers are so polluted, city air is obviously a shame. I mean, it basically takes us back to what developed countries were in the 60s. And it probably took them almost a quarter of a century to fix things to some degree. So where do you see India's hope? Of course, 2070 is such a long distance away. I mean, almost 48 years. So what do you think are the immediate steps which might make city life breathable, water more cleaner in general, and things like that? You have some insight or some statistical information on how it could happen?
Yeah, so one of the things where there's a lot of kind of hue and cry on now is how buildings need to be mandated to certify some type of green code. And while there's no standardization of what a green code looks like, but as our cities grow and as the population in the city demands more, I think making our immediate spaces, from our buildings to our neighborhoods and parks, as sustainable as possible. So that might be making buildings insular, that might be installing solar panels on our rooftops or growing urban gardens. But I think in the short term, that as we plan for our cities to grow, the more we can do to make our living more sustainable in our immediate kind of radius. the bigger impact those bubbles will have at creating a citywide and then a statewide and then a countrywide difference to net zero.
Absolutely. I think the individual and then obviously organizations, groups, and country at large. So, I was really curious to know about what you've done so far and then what you're planning to do next at the Harvard Kennedy School. It's obviously such a coveted sort of institution in their own space. The Masters of Public Policy is so well regarded. Uh, how did that thought process arise in your head, and what what made you to commit to that path of pursuing grad school?
Right. So I think, I always knew I wanted to go back to the US for my grad school. I was interested in both business and policy. So I applied to the policy school and got in, but I'm also interested in applying for business school this year. And a lot of my work at NI have created that dual interest in business and policy. Because as I mentioned, the team that I was on, we did a lot of investment policy facilitation, but without both government and private sector cooperation, policies get stagnated, as do investments. So I think my biggest learning at NIF has been the role that the government can play in creating platforms for private investments, and the best way to kind of build that platform quickly is through policies that are efficient and policies that take into consideration multiple stakeholders. And I knew that I wanted to be in a program which not only made me evaluate the business side of things, as I would get out of an MBA, but also, the ethical arguments, and forced me to really consider a more holistic perspective on policy design.
Great. So tell us a little bit more about HKS and the MPP MBA. Is it becoming really popular to sort of do that combination? And
yeah, so HKS is the HKS has three programs. One is the Masters in Public Policy, the other is Masters in Public Administration, and the third is the Masters in Public Administration with a focus on international development. All three programs have slightly different requirements. And the MPA itself is slightly more quantitatively oriented, and it's kind of like it's like a mid-career program for people interested in pursuing public policy in the long term. The MPP has a focus, a huge focus on leadership development, and how do you not only understand issues that are dominating debates in society today, but how do you act on those in an ethical manner? And it also allows you to kind of concentrate in an area. So for instance, given my interest, my concentration would be business and government. The MPP and MBA combination, I don't really know a lot of people who've done it, but I think the time commitment of 3 years is a lot. As well as being able to finance it for 3 years, and also being out of the workforce for the entirety of the 3 years. So there are a lot of considerations, but I knew that the program would have very high long-term dividends for me, so I was really excited about it.
Fantastic. And how it works is you can apply to accredited programs while you're in your program. So is that something
No, you can apply together as well. There are a list of partner schools. You can just apply at the same time.
Got it. And you hear back from your MBA program school before you get there, or you have no idea?
You hear back the same time, pretty
Okay.
much. Yeah.
Okay. So where are you combining with? So are you combining with HKS and some other school, or?
Yeah, so if you apply in your first year, as I am, you don't have the option to apply to HBS. But if you apply together, then you do. I'm applying to one of the 4 schools that HKS has a tie-up with, which is Stanford, Wharton, MIT, and Tuck.
Sounds fascinating. So looking forward to following your journey in the future, Anya. And thank you so much for taking time for doing this today with me. All the best, and hope to see you stateside next year, not on this trip, since we won't be overlapping. Take care then. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.